Welcome, everybody. It is Coach Action Jackson, and I'm honored and privileged to have George here today. George is an incredible success story, and I want to share his story with all of you. He started at 326 pounds, and now 2 years later, he's all the way down to 248 pounds, an incredible 78 pounds lost. In addition to that, he's gone from roughly around 42% body fat all the way down to 25% body fat. It's been an incredible, insane, and really transformational journey for you, George. So welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Why don't we just, rewind it back to where were you at 2 years ago? And how did you
Yeah.
get to that place? Environmental factors, family factors, whatever it might be, but let's take it back 2 years.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we're in the midst of the pandemic. Everybody's stuck at home. Gyms are closed. There's not really a good place to work out. And I hadn't seen my family in a year at that point because we just, for safety reasons, we didn't get together. And so the first time that I had seen my family, we had gotten together. My brother lives in California. I live in San Antonio, Texas. And then my family, where I grew up, is right on the Texas-Mexico border in South Texas. And so my brother, I'm the youngest of three. He is the oldest, or he's the middle child, and he lost so much weight. Like he made the most of his pandemic time in the house. And when we took a picture together, suddenly I was I may have been the youngest brother, the littlest one, but in the picture I was the biggest one by far. My sister also took care of herself. At the same time, I was a foster parent and I was fostering two children, one of now who is my son. I adopted him. So I was learning how to become a parent in the middle of a pandemic, working from home, don't really have much ways to get activity done. And so just over time, it started to balloon. My weight just started to go up and up and up. And it all goes back to where I grew up. I grew up, like I said, in deep South Texas. And even now where I live in San Antonio, they're constantly rated in the top 10 of the most obese cities or regions in America. So the environment itself doesn't lend itself to a healthy lifestyle. The food definitely is one that it just, like when you move here, people always say, just be ready to lose 15 pounds after like the first 3 months that you live here. It's sadly it's true. And like it's really easy to gain weight here. And um, I just let myself go, between the stresses of learning how to become a parent and everything within the pandemic. And that's when I decided, you know what, I need to make a change for myself. And I had tried so many other diets before, and it would work for the 30 or 60 days that I was supposed to be following that plan, but I had no follow up afterwards, no matter how many times I went to the gym. So that's when I said I need to make a permanent change and decided, you know what, I think weight loss surgery is going to be the tool or the avenue that I want to use to get to where I want to be.
Absolutely. It's a bit controversial, right? Because some people think that that's a very good thing to do, and some people
Mm-hmm.
disagree, and so there's mixed opinions on this. And I have a I guess a closeness to this because my mom went and had weight loss surgery. She actually had multiple weight loss surgeries, and the thing is that everybody thinks that's the magic bullet or the silver bullet, and it didn't work for my mom. She initially had lap band surgery and lost a bunch of weight initially because in the aftermath of having any type of weight loss surgery, and obviously you could speak to this more, but she was not allowed or able to eat any sort of solid foods. And so she would have to be on a liquid diet for a period of time, basically like protein shakes. She would lose a bunch of weight very, very fast. And then slowly but surely, would come back. And she had initially had lap band surgery, and then they tightened the band, and then that wasn't working well enough. So she ended up going in and having gastric bypass, and then again lost a bunch of weight. And then it slowly started to kind of come back. And so That must have been a very difficult decision for you. A lot of people might think that it'd be against having a weight loss surgery like you had, but I think in the right circumstances, if it is a life or death scenario and situation, and I also think if you are absolutely willing to commit to changing your exercise and your eating habits, I think in that scenario, it can be the right decision to make. Now, it didn't work in my mom's situation because she wasn't willing to make the changes. She wasn't willing to start exercising and she wasn't willing to change the foods that she ate. She still ate very poorly, and that's why it didn't work. So, in her case, I don't think it was the right fit, and that's why it didn't work. But in your case, obviously, it helped tremendously to get you started. And then, of course, now you've also committed to making the appropriate changes with exercise, strength training, most importantly, and also changing your eating habits. Now, we worked with one other client named Robin who lost 102 pounds in 11 months, and she was also considering weight loss surgery. And I encouraged her, and her husband did, just because of the risks of surgery, to give us a shot first. And she gave us 4 weeks, and that turned into 11 months at 102 pounds. So in her situation, it wasn't something that was appropriate. We were able to solve the problem going just with the exercise in the changing the habits. But I think it can be the right decision for some people. And if it is, I don't like to be judgmental or dogmatic about what people do in order to get to the outcomes. In your case, it was the absolute right call. And again, it's because you committed to changing your habits and you've invested clearly in your health and your fitness. And that's why we've had such a great outcome here. So just wanted to destigmatize that a bit and share that perspective. How did your environment just kind of, talk to me a little bit more about how did the environment play into that? And how did then having the surgery, what was the results after the surgery? Like, how was the weight loss, the success? Did you start changing your habits immediately? What was that like?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as it being controversial, like I definitely heard a lot of that. When made the decision, they're like, "Are you, why don't you just go on a diet and stuff like that?" And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you're at that point when you need surgery, especially in my case, it's a life or death situation because my doctor had told me if you don't change something or do something you're gonna get diabetes. And in my family, diabetes is a death sentence. And so at that point, when I'm being told like, "Hey, this is it says you're on the path to a life or death situation," what everyone else says can go out the window because I need to make sure that I'm here for my wife and my son, and that I'm taking the best care of myself possible. And so when I decided to make that decision to do that surgery, there's a lot of prep that goes into it. I made the decision in July of 2021. And I wasn't eligible to get the surgery until November of 2021 because you have to go through a lot of psychological evaluations. You have to meet with a food counselor. You have to meet with the doctor. A lot of this is obviously for insurance purposes, but they also, a good doctor who will do this for you wants to make sure that you're not only going to be physically prepared, but also mentally prepared because as they told me, the weight loss surgery itself is simply a tool. It is not the magic bullet. It is not the end all be all, like you're never going to gain weight again. No, this is just one of many tools that you're adding to your tool belt to help you live a healthy lifestyle. And what my surgery basically did to me, so the surgery that I got was the gastric sleeve. And so what that one does is they cut off about 75% of your stomach. So everything in my digestive system still is connected and works the way that it should, but I have a much smaller stomach than the average person. And so what that does is that it almost gives me like a hard stop when I'm eating. And before if I saw food on my plate, I was taught you finish your food. Like you do not let food go to waste, which I've now learned that's not the smartest way to raise a child because that teaches them to overeat and it doesn't teach them self control. And so I basically gave myself a hard stop in my body, and my body itself will tell me, okay, you're full because I will feel it. It will hurt if I go any further. And there's also certain foods that I can no longer eat, like rice, for example. My stomach does not handle rice anymore. Something that's very starchy, high in carbohydrates. Those are things that I can't really eat. And I can eat in moderation, but very little. I have had to make a full switch to a high protein diet. Um, and it's easy to do when you want to eat meat and pork and chicken and all that stuff, but then it's all the stuff you add on top of that that makes it where it's not as healthy as it can be. And so that it really makes you start to think like what am I eating? What am I putting into my body? And how can I make sure that this is the best choice possible?
I love what you just said there about how you're teaching your children to have self control, and you're not teaching them that you have to clean everything off of their plate. And I think that's a very important mindset. But I think it speaks to how these these scripts can be written inside of our head that dictate our futures and dictate our outcome and our weight and what we do for a living and our finances and all of these beliefs that we have. But it's something that's invisible. One of my mentors, his name is Ramit Sethi. He was my first business coach, and he talks about invisible scripts and how they can dictate your life. And that was an invisible script that, for you at least, had a very significant impact on your health, your fitness, your weight, and it could have potentially even cost you your life. So, how did you rewrite that script inside your head and then come to the realization that I need to change this for the next generation?
Yeah, so a big part of that, I mean, besides my body talking to myself, a big part of that is having a support system at home that helps you with that. And in this case, that was my wife. Now, my wife works in the medical field, so she's very conscious about things like that. And she also helped reinforce, like, and when she sees me when I'm like going overboard, she's like, hey, take it easy. Like, don't hurt yourself. And at first, when we first had kids, um, I, you know, automatically was like, "Hey, finish what's on your plate. Like, don't throw that away." And she's like, "No, no, 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 don't teach them that." And then she actually educated me on why we shouldn't from a medical perspective. Um, and then it made so much sense, and I had never really realized it because I'd never been exposed to something like that. And so having that support system at home is tremendous as far as being able to uh, make sure you have that proper script to teach the next generation and not just repeat the same mistakes that you're living, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, we spoke about environment a bit, obviously being something that can dictate your weight, your health, your fitness, all of these things. And while our external environment, the place we live, for example, can be one way, the environment in our house is obviously so much more important since we spend the most time there. And these are the people around us that we spend the most time with. So I think it's incredibly important that you have that type of support at home. And what an absolute gift that is, because I've worked with thousands and thousands of people now over the 10 years that I've been doing this. And in that time, I've had quite a few people who've had somewhat contentious relationships with their spouses and partners, where you'll see sometimes a spouse or a partner that's actually sabotaging the success of the person I'm working with. One client in particular, I'm obviously not going to mention his name or give any details about his identity, but he would tell me how his wife would say, "Oh, you're not going to have ice cream with your daughter," and he's trying to lose weight. He's struggling with things, and she's literally just throwing a bomb, throwing a grenade right there, just blowing up. You're not going to have ice cream with your daughter. implying that he's a bad father by not having ice cream with his daughter when he's struggling with his weight and, pre-diabetic, struggling, trying to lose weight, trying to get healthy and fit so he could be around and provide for his family and be a good dad and an example. And it's just like, it's mind blowing to me sometimes, the difficulties that people will run into with their spouse and their partner. And I think it's really important to have crucial conversations, uncomfortable conversations, even. And I'm so glad that you didn't have to do that. But when I do come across this, it's one of the coaching things we do is you have to get that support at home. So you have to have that conversation and say, this is really important to me and I need your support and I can't do this without you. And here's why it's important. And here's why I want to be around and be an example and all these things. And I think if you do that correctly, then the person that you're with, I mean, if they actually really care about you and love you, they're going to give you your support. But it does sometimes take having those really difficult conversations. And I had to coach him through that. And it wasn't easy. And he didn't want to do it at first, but it was so necessary for his long-term success. And he did go on to eventually lose weight after having those conversations and sort of changing the structure of his environment and making it a little bit more positive and supportive. Now, I want to get into some of the good things, right? So we've talked a little bit about some of the more rougher things, the more difficult things, but I mean, here you are, you're doing so well. You've lost a ton of weight. Obviously, you've gained strength and you've gained muscle and all these things, and it's been incredible. So you had this initial sort of weight loss and transformation after having gastric bypass, and you got the tonal and all these things, and then you started to slip back into your bad habits, and then you made another additional push, and that's where we kind of connected and started working together. And we started when you were around 260 pounds. We got you down to 248 pounds, 12 pounds lost. But that's not the entire story, because a lot of people tend to focus just on weight, and weight is not the only metric. It's not even the best metric for judging your transformation. But we took you from 31% body fat down to 25, 6% body fat lost. We took your fat mass from 78 down to 64, 14 pounds of total fat loss off your body, which is incredible, but also added on an additional 7 pounds of lean mass, which was fantastic. 2.5 inches off the waist, 3 inches off the hips. So let's get to the point where now you start to slip back. What was going on where you started to slip back before then linking up with me and then going for the next journey?
Yeah, so the big part of that was just carelessness and not remembering what I was taught. Because I mean, I don't go to the doctor every day or every week or anything like that. It's like a 6 month check-in, an annual check-in, things like that. And also the environment that I was in. So in San Antonio this past year, at the beginning of the year, we finally got a professional football team with the XFL. And with football comes tailgating. And with tailgating comes a lot of food, a lot of beer, which is a great time. But I mean, when you do that for 3 months and you're eating every weekend, just going to town and going like just getting crazy with it, those that started to erase a lot of the good habits that I had. And it was like, I'll be fine. The breakfast taco in the morning that's loaded with refried beans and greasy potatoes and all that stuff, like it's not a big deal. It's just one. But then one became, it's just one the next day. And then it's just another one the next day. And I started to erase a lot of the bad things. And then I would hit the weekend and then I would just go nuts, because that was also my escape from work, escape from stress and stuff like that. And so my environment played a big part of that, as far as just letting go, and not making sure that I was conscious of what I was putting into my body at that time. Like, it's okay to have fun every once in a while, but everything in moderation, I think, is super important, which is one of the main things that I learned with you. Where I was like, I don't have to give up the things that I love. It's just make sure you moderate it.
Absolutely. That's one of our core mantras, right? It's progress, not perfection. And to your point, We don't want to have to completely give up anything. We don't want you to feel super restricted, because if you do, that's usually where people struggle, because they feel like they're shackled or handcuffed, and then they break, and then they're like, I can't wait to go get a cheeseburger. And we want you to be like, I just had an ice cream bar last night. I don't need a cheeseburger today. And again, if you do it in moderation, you can have these things, these like little treats throughout your week, and then you don't feel super restricted, and then you don't feel like you're on a diet. And that's really the most important thing, because health and fitness is going to be something we all have to prioritize for the rest of our lives. You're going to eat for the rest of your life. You want to work out for the rest of your life. So it can't be a 30-day sprint. It can't be a 60-day sprint. It can't be 75 days and then it's over. It needs to be a lifetime, a lifelong pursuit. And that's why we really focus on progress, not perfection, living in those gray zones, right? And knowing that we're committed, we're in it to win it, of course, but there's varying degrees of that at different times. But we never want to completely go in one direction or the other. We want to avoid the extremes, because that's usually where people tend to break. In fact, one of the other clients that we worked with named Donnie, he lost 100 pounds, and it was another transformation like you. He was diagnosed with diabetes. The doctor said, you have to make a change. And he went to the utmost extreme, eating perfect chicken breast, broccoli, brown rice, drinking tons of water, working out for 2 hours a day. And then he came to us because he couldn't manage it anymore. He was like, this is so extreme. I need something that's a little bit more moderate. And we certainly helped him get in better shape, lose more body fat, gain more muscle, etc. But we helped him do it in a way that was a little bit more sustainable. That's really what we preach. So with the tailgating and all of these things, how did you make this change? And how are you going to be able to continue moving forward, given that, I mean, as far as I know, you're still working with the XFL. So how are you going to manage this in the future?
So it's definitely something that I'm going to be a lot more conscious of when I'm, getting food ready, when I'm, getting stuff ready. Like I'm still going to tailgate. I'm still going to have a good time. I'm still going to go out with my friends, but I am going to make sure that I remember all the work that I've put in to get to where I'm at now, and how much of a benefit it's been for me to be able to be as healthy as I am now. Like, for example, this past weekend, I helped a friend of mine move into a second floor apartment, which is never any fun. But I hadn't worked out that day. And so now I saw that. I was like, oh, cool. I get my workout in for the day. So I'm starting to see things differently. And like whenever there's an opportunity for me to be more functional with my, with the strength or with, just conditioning and stuff like that, in the case of like moving in my friend, like that's going to be how I approach it. And so when I'm preparing food, I want to make sure that, or if I'm having a beer or something, I need to make sure that I remember, hey, take it easy, listen to your body, remember what it took to get to this point, because I don't want to lose the progress that I've made. Because so many people have complimented me on like my appearance, my confidence, um, just so many things that before I didn't show like out in public because I was afraid, but now um, I feel so good about myself that people it resonates, like people see it and they feed off of it. And that's definitely something that I'm going to make sure that I carry with me as we go into because the next season starts at the end of March, right when it starts warming up and people want to go out and being outdoors and all that stuff. So I just need to make sure that I'm careful with how much I'm consuming, how I'm consuming, and not forget what I'm doing. Because, and I didn't mention this earlier, but your program actually has helped me make some money. Because I am a content creator by trade. So I like, in layman's terms, I'm a TikToker. Um, and I make ads for companies that are partner with TikTok and they're looking for content creators to help them with ads for their either it's an app or a product, things like that. And I've had multiple fitness companies or apps reach out to me, because they see that it looks like I'm in good shape, it looks like I'm healthy, and then I can present to them a before and after, And that has earned me multiple opportunities to work with these companies to make content for them. So I wouldn't have been able to do that, especially not like when I have to take my shirt off. Like I'd have been so embarrassed to do that. And now I'm like, do you need me to flex? Like, what do you need me to do? And that's all thanks to you.
Well, I really appreciate it, but you did the work, and it's incredible, right? The doors that open, the opportunities when you're health, when you're fit, when you've pushed yourself and gained that strength and that confidence. It radiates off of you, right? It radiates, that confidence radiates. People receive it, and they respond to you differently. Opportunities come. It's just absolutely incredible, and you're certainly not the first person that said something like that. Where, look, it's not like you wouldn't have gotten any opportunities if you weren't as fit as you are today. But more things, more good stuff just kind of comes in when you're feeling good and you're looking good and you're walking around and carrying yourself that certain way. More opportunities, more good, more positivity just comes in your direction. It's just contagious. And you said a couple of really interesting things I want to point on there. The first is the compare and contrast. So you talked about, being in that environment and saying, remembering all the hard work that you put in, remembering where you've come from, the journey, everything. And that's called compare and contrast. It's a really good psychological principle that people can use if they're struggling or if they have a decision, remembering, okay, where did I come from, and how far have I come? All the work I put in, I don't want to ruin that. So you're looking back, and then you're also looking forward to your future self. And now you have something that you're kind of going away from, and then something that you're running towards. They've done studies with rats on this, where they would waft the scent of cheese into like this little cage, and then they would attach something to the rat's tail to see how fast they would run and how hard they would pull. And if they wafted the scent of cheese in, the rat would run towards the cheese, and they would run pretty fast. As you can imagine, a hungry rat runs pretty fast. Then they would waft the scent of a cat in from behind them, and then they would run away from the cat, and they would run pretty fast, as you can imagine. But then they would waft the scent of cheese in and the scent of the cat. So now they have something to run away from and something to run towards, and they would run and pull as fast as they possibly could, much more so than they would in either the other two circumstances. So we need something to run towards. We need the carrot, but we also need a bit of the stick. And I think about this all the time. I've significantly increased my sleep and my quality of sleep, and I've also decreased the amount of alcohol, right? Two of the same or one in the same, because you drink less, you're going to sleep better. And the reason I've been able to control my alcohol consumption so much more, it's not because I'm so disciplined and I'm just I'm just the king of willpower. It's because when it comes time to be that I presented the opportunity with, do you want a second cocktail? Do you want a second drink? Or do I want to open up a bottle of wine? I say, do I want to do this? Okay, I know where I'm coming from. I know what the progress I've made, the workouts I've done, the hard work I put in. I don't want to dampen that, or I don't want to reduce the impact of that. And I don't want to ruin my workout, of course, or any of those things. And then I think about the consequences of that. I'm going to sleep worse tonight. I'm going to wake up with brain fog. The energy level is not going to be there. I'm not going to look so glowing on camera here. And I'm not going to have the energy to wake up early and do these interviews or get after it or work out or whatever. And I think about the consequences of that. Now, of course, I think about the positive benefits, and sometimes it might be worth it. But more often than not, the short-term gain is not worth the long-term pain of having that second, that third, or fourth drink. So that's where you do the compare and contrast. And then the other thing that you mentioned was obviously like just making sure that you're staying in a positive environment and mindset. So you have the positive environment at home, which is fantastic. That's going to be your kind of like foundation and your grounding zone. And then you go off into whether it's tailgating or other stuff, and give yourself the gift of having and enjoying and participating, but not to the point that it's going to be detrimental for your progress. Now, the next question I want to talk about, you mentioned it a little bit, was mindset. How has your mindset shifted? Because starting where you were at, 326 pounds, and having to get going through the first transformation and everything, that had to have been just life changing in itself. And then that middle point, and then to now where you're at now, how has it shifted over time, and how have you been able to make those changes?
Yeah, so The biggest thing for me is becoming a father. Like that has probably been one of the biggest motivations for me personally, because at 326 pounds, there's no way I would have ever been able to teach my son how to play soccer and play with him and practice with him like I have been for the past year and a half now. There's no way that I would have been able to uh, participate in swimming lessons with him, you know. And he's only 3 years old, and I want to make sure that I get him in these active habits right now. And so that he has been one of my biggest motivations is I got to be present as a father and make sure that I'm able to teach him the things that I want to teach him in a positive way and not feel so out of breath just by simply putting on my shoes. Because I used to be, when I was 326 pounds, putting on my shoes was a chore and a task. Let me tell you, like when you got a big bang over your belt and it's in the way of you and your feet, it's hard to put your shoes on, which sounds crazy to get to that point, but I was at that point, and the same mind shift is making sure that I remember that I was staring death in the face. And so when I'm in an environment where people maybe don't know my history or know that I had this surgery done, someone offers you a beer or a second plate of food or something like that, and you reject it, some people might take offense to that. I'm not afraid to tell them, like, no, 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 like I physically cannot have this because my stomach, and then explain to them like what I went through, and be just myself unapologetically. Um, once I every it's never failed. Once I tell someone that I've had surgery and I physically cannot consume what they're offering me, they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know." Like I'm like, "Yeah, no, so don't take offense to it." Like so there's that aspect of it, and also being on social media as much as I am, I put myself out there. So I put pictures of my before and after out on social media for the world to see. And that also serves as a reminder to myself when I need to go back and say, hey, look how far you've come. Do you really want this to go away? Um, like that also helps motivate me. And the last one's more for like kind of just myself. I'm a bit, like I said, I've mentioned, like I'm teaching my son how to play soccer. I'm a big soccer fan. You don't see very many obese soccer players, and I love wearing soccer jerseys. I'm wearing one right now, and I would they wouldn't fit me, and I want to fit into this kind of clothing. So that's also a motivator for me, is like I want to wear what I'm happy and comfortable wearing. And that I don't want to go back to never being able to wear them again, because I've been there and I would see my jerseys in my closet and I'd be like, I can't wear it. It doesn't fit me no more.
Yeah, there's a couple of really amazing things that you just shared there. So the last thing was the jerseys and feeling happy in that, and just being authentically yourself. And when you don't have to worry about your weight as a factor anymore, when you're not worried about how your clothes fit, you're not worried about how you appear, or you're out of breath, or any of those things, you can be very authentic. You can be your authentic self. You can step into that role and you could just be yourself. And it's incredible. Again, the connections, the relationships, how you come across, and then the confidence that comes from that. And it's just fantastic. And I'm so happy to hear that, because I hear so frequently from people before, right, when they're in that before state, how difficult it is, how they feel self-conscious in situations. They take forever to put their clothes on because they're constantly looking. They look at the clothes in the closet that they can't put on, and it's very frustrating, and sometimes even depressing. So that is so important, and I think it's a fantastic way to really hold yourself accountable moving forward. Another thing that you mentioned was a social contract that you kind of created there by posting and sharing certain things on social media. Now you have a bit of a social contract where you've created a little bit of pressure for yourself, good pressure, to stay where you're at and to keep this identity up. Obviously, I do the same thing. I have clients, I'm putting myself out there on social media as being a certain way, and I want to be authentic in that, and I want to be sort of morally and ethically aligned. Who I say I am is who I am in real life. So I can't say one thing and I can't ask my clients to do one thing and then me do another. That just doesn't work for me. My moral compass does not work like that. So that is a very strong motivator, if you will, to living the life I want to live and having the outcomes I have. And the last thing I want to mention is just how beautiful what you shared about being a dad. And really, this all comes back to number one, identity, right? The identity of a father, the identity of who you are as a content creator, and all this stuff. And the power of identity is so important. And James Clear talks about this in his book, Atomic Habits, how important identity can be in shaping your behaviors and who you are. And when you put that identity on, it's amazing how almost overnight, like in the snap of a finger, you can completely shift. And once your identity shifts, and I say this all the time to clients when they join, everything else becomes easy. Like when you become a dad, all of a sudden certain things become easy. Waking up in the middle of the night, easy. Changing dirty diapers, easy. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to think about it anymore. You just do it because you identify as being a dad and a good one at that. But what was so beautiful about what you shared about your role as a dad and a father is it just reminds me of my relationship with my father and the example he set to me, getting me a weight set, the Hulkamania weight set when I was just 5 years old, and working out with him and wanting to be big and strong like my dad. And you're setting that example, and you're setting your kids up now for future success so they don't have to go through the struggles and the difficulties and all the things that you went through. And I think that's so noble and so admirable. And I want to thank you for doing that because my dad did that for me. He gave me that gift. And it's so incredibly valuable and it's bonded us so much. Even last week, I was visiting my dad in Chicago and we went to the gym together twice and worked out together. And he's 76 years old now. I'm 41 and we're still working out together all these years later. And it's just such a bonding moment. It makes me emotional to think about it because it started when I was 5 working out with my dad and now all the way to now, and we're still doing the same thing together. And it's just such a beautiful experience to go to the gym with my dad and work out and to have that gift for yourself and for your children. Wow, what an incredible gift, George. So thank you for doing that. That's what we call generational health. And it's so important. You're setting your kids up for a long, healthy, active life without many of the struggles that you had with health and fitness and weight. So thank
Yeah,
you
I
for
mean,
doing that.
I want him to just have a much better life and be better prepared for it than I was. I mean, not to say that I was ill prepared. My parents did a great job, but I want to improve on where they could have maybe done a little bit, things a little bit different.
Of course. And I mean, to be fair, your parents did the best they could given the
Right.
situation, like all of our parents do, but there wasn't as much knowledge, there wasn't as much emphasis, there wasn't as much awareness on health and fitness and all these things that we now have, right? The mentality used to be clean your plate because food used to be so much more scarce. Our environment around us has changed. Our access to food has changed. The types of food has changed. The types of work people do has changed. All of these things have changed, and it's just in the last few generations. So it's not fair to look back to whether it's my parents, your parents, whoever, and say, "Oh, they didn't do this for us." And often, most of the cases, they didn't know any better. They didn't have the same knowledge and education that we have now. So that's why it's so important that you're doing this now because it's just getting harder and harder for people to stay fit and keep their weight down and be healthy because we're getting more sedentary. More work is done in front of computers like this. People are working from home now more than ever. Access to food is tremendous. We have so many options all over the place. Food is engineered to bypass our hunger signals and to bypass so you eat more and you eat past when you would normally feel full. So the environment is just stacked against people. And that's why it's so important what you're doing. So again, I just want to say thank you. Now, this obviously has been an incredible journey. Is there anything else that you want to share, whether it's obstacles you faced and overcome, whether it's lessons learned along the way, just anything else that you'd like to share for people listening out there?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that people need to know is that there's life is going to come at you when you least expect it. In my particular case, when I was working with you, I had three deaths over the course of, I want to say like 6 weeks. And they were, it was an uncle, my best friend's mom, who has been, she was my second mom since I was 5 years old. And then the week of Thanksgiving, 2 weeks ago, my dog of 12 years passed away. And it just like one thing after another, it just gutted me. And it's okay to step back and take a break and take a breather. I had to do that because I wanted to work out. I felt bad and guilty. I was like, I miss, like, I need to, like, I'm not putting in any work this week, but my mind just wasn't in it, and I needed to make sure that mentally I was okay first before I got back on that saddle and kept on moving forward. And it was really hard, to deal with all of those things. But having a support system, having that time to just breathe and know that, hey, if you don't do it right now, that's okay. Just make sure you get back on the saddle and keep moving forward. That's what matters most. And even now, like, I still hurt, that the hurt never goes away. You just kind of learn to accept it and live with it. And um, especially around the holidays, it just makes it even, just compounds it even more. But I'm still moving forward. Like just before this interview, I finished a workout. I've been working out regularly. I've still been eating as clean as possible, and taking care of myself. And I've actually lost even more weight since the last time, since no, the stats that you read off at the start of the show. And it's just got to make sure that it's okay to fall off track a little bit, but it's getting back on track that you need to, people should really make sure they put a lot of emphasis on and don't give up just because life gets a little bit tough sometimes.
I really appreciate you sharing that and just being open and honest. And I'm so sorry for your losses, George. Obviously, I know we talked a few times about what you were going through, and you're right. Sometimes, especially if there's a death in the family, you do need to take a little bit of a break, a pullback. You do need some time to process, to deal with these emotions, and also logistically, there's a lot of things that need to be done as well, which is always difficult to handle as well. So there's so much going on, and it's okay. But the key is, as you mentioned, is not to abandon it. I like to think of it sometimes as a road trip. If you're on a road trip, there's going to be times when you're in the HOV lane, the toll road, there's a clearing on the road, and there's no traffic, and you're just whizzing by. You're going 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, and it's great. Then sometimes you hit a little bit of traffic. Now all of a sudden you're stuck. It's bumper to bumper. You're kind of just moving along very slowly. But just because you get stuck in traffic or you hit a traffic jam, you don't put your car in park, get out of it, slash the tires, throw the keys away and burn the car down and just start walking. You don't abandon everything and make it worse for yourself. That would be ridiculous, right? When you use that analogy, it's like, that's ridiculous. Why would I wreck my car just because I'm stuck in traffic? Well, people do this all the time with their health and their fitness, with their body. Okay, I get a little bit off track or something, an obstacle happens. There's a death in the family. Okay, maybe I can't work out for a week or 2 weeks, or I'm struggling. Diet isn't quite, where it needs to be. So let me just go ahead and burn it all down and go to McDonald's and In and Out and just forget about it and whatever, because I'm off anyway. It doesn't make any sense when you really think about it, but we just get caught in the emotion of all of this and we kind of give ourselves that out. I think what you did was very commendable, which is you obviously took the step back, you processed, but you were very keen and very careful to know that spiraling down and ruminating and going down that negative tangent is just going to make things harder and make things worse for you in the long run. So it's like you might as well make your body, your mind as strong as they can be. Then you can handle some of these difficulties a little bit better. And then by not spiraling out of control, you don't make it any worse because it's already difficult enough to deal with. So I think that was, again, something very commendable. And when my mom passed, it was traumatic and difficult. And I gained probably almost 10 pounds, I think, during that time because she was in a hospice and then there was the passing. And so it was a month or so of just very, no workouts almost, difficult, not eating well, probably having more alcohol. But I never let it spiral completely out of control. I never abandoned the wagon or abandoned the car. I didn't burn everything down. And I kept it at least as much as I could up. And then as soon as I got back home, I got right back into it and started building up those habits again. As difficult as that was initially, I just knew long term that would be so much better for my mental and emotional health than it would be to go down the other path. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so important for people because people face obstacles and struggles, and they use that as some sort of sign to say, well, maybe it's not the right time, or maybe this was stupid, or you know what, I don't know what I was thinking by going down this health and fitness journey. It's not for me because clearly the universe is saying something. And the universe isn't saying that. What the universe is saying is that bad stuff sometimes happens. And we have to do the best we can to just overcome and keep putting one step in front of the other, and that's all we can do. And again, understanding that this is a lifelong journey, health and fitness, lifelong journey. So there's going to be all kinds of obstacles along the way, and we have to learn how to navigate them. And you learned very well how to handle some traumatic and very difficult obstacles. Not to say it was easy, it certainly isn't, but you did a fantastic job, my friend. And
Thank you.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you and just say how appreciative I am for you, how thankful I am for you, all the hard work that you put in for trusting me, investing in yourself. I appreciate you, my friend. This has been tremendous. I think we've done a lot of good today to sort of destigmatize weight loss surgery for the people who that it is right for, but also to understand that it's not necessarily a magic bullet. We need to change our mindset. We need to change our identity. We need to change our habits. We need to try to control our environment and manipulate and manage that so that it supports our goals as well. So there's so many great lessons that you shared today. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for letting me
Of
reminisce a
course.
little bit about my dad and working out with him and all the good that you're doing for your kids as well. So thank you, George.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Any last words for people out there?
Um, yeah, when you start to take care of yourself, your body changes. And exercise for me now is kind of a form of therapy. Whether even if it's as little as 20 minutes a day, it helps me on a daily basis. And, you know, going to changing my eating habits, I could have very easily spiraled out of control. I had one hamburger when I was visiting family for one of the deaths that I was, for a funeral, and it tasted terrible. My stomach, my body rejected it. So putting good habits kind of shields you from adopting and falling back into bad habits. Because now I can't have that fast food anymore because my body will just reject it. I feel terrible, and I don't want to feel that way. So, put in, lay the foundation, and when something happens, you'll be protected.
Thank you so much, George. This will be very quick, but I quit cupcakes for a year. A lot of people probably don't know this. I talked about it obviously with you. I shared it in our group. So I quit cupcakes for a year. After I think 13 months, I had my first cupcake from Sprinkles. And after I ate it, I was like, this is way too much sugar. I was like, I don't feel good. So you're right
Yeah.
about that. Once you get on the healthy path and you're dialing things in, and once you're operating at this level and you do anything that takes you down a peg, man, it's like putting bad gas or regular fuel in a Ferrari. You just don't feel as good. You don't operate as well. And you're like, I want to get back to this level. So thank you for sharing that last tidbit. And remember, everybody out there, action is the difference between dreaming and succeeding. We will see you in the next one.